Have you ever stopped to think about the small habits you follow each morning? The ones that have become so ingrained in your routine, you don't even question them. Today, I want to share the story of Mr. Parker, a 75-year-old man who lived a fulfilling life. Mr. Parker, much like many of us, had his set ways. He was disciplined and cared deeply about his health, or at least he thought he did. But one crisp autumn morning, everything changed. That day, he collapsed suddenly, leaving his family devastated and wondering how something like this could have happened to someone who seemed so healthy. Mr. Parker was a man of habits. He'd spent years working hard, raising his family, and enjoying the fruits of his labor in retirement. His children were grown, and his home was filled with the warmth of family, especially on weekends when his grandkids would visit. He loved spending time in his garden, taking walks in the neighborhood, and sitting on the porch with his wife, enjoying the quiet of their peaceful life together. To anyone who knew him, he seemed to have it all together, a strong, active man who took care of himself. But what his family didn't realize, and what even Mr. Parker hadn't noticed, were the small ways his morning habits had begun to work against him as he got older. He had always been proud of his routine. Wake up early, get a cup of black coffee, and jump straight into his day. Whether it was working on small projects around the house or heading outside to tend to his garden, Mr. Parker didn't like to waste any time. His philosophy had always been, if you want to stay strong, you need to stay busy. But that morning, the morning he collapsed, his body had been sending him warnings for weeks. He just hadn't recognized them. The truth is, as we get older, the habits we've maintained for years can have different effects on our bodies. What used to feel invigorating in our 40s or 50s can start to strain our systems in our 60s and 70s. Mr. Parker's collapse was a result of several factors coming together. Factors that his family didn't fully understand until it was too late. And it all started with his morning routine. One of the biggest mistakes Mr. Parker made, and one that many of us might be making too, was not drinking enough water in the morning. For years, Mr. Parker started his day with a cup of coffee. That warm, comforting mug was his favorite way to wake up. But what he didn't realize was that, after hours of sleep, his body was dehydrated. Even though he didn't feel thirsty, his body was desperately in need of water, especially after sleeping through the night. And the coffee he loved so much? Well, it was actually making things worse. Coffee is a diuretic, meaning it causes the body to lose even more water. And for older adults, dehydration can be a major risk factor for heart problems. As we age, our blood naturally becomes thicker if we're not drinking enough water. This thicker blood is harder for the heart to pump, which can lead to an increased risk of heart attacks and strokes, especially in the morning when our bodies are just waking up. Mr. Parker's habit of going straight to coffee without drinking water first was putting extra strain on his heart every day, and that morning it finally caught up to him. Starting your day with a glass of water is one of the simplest ways to protect your health. It helps to rehydrate your body, thin your blood, and ease the workload on your heart. It's an easy habit to build into your routine, and yet so many of us, like Mr. Parker, skip this important step. If you're used to reaching for coffee first thing in the morning, try changing the order. Drink a glass of water first, then enjoy your coffee a little later, once your body is properly hydrated. Another habit that Mr. Parker overlooked was eating breakfast. As he got older, his appetite wasn't what it used to be. He didn't feel the same hunger in the mornings, so he often skipped breakfast altogether, thinking it wasn't a big deal. But for older adults, skipping breakfast can have serious consequences. After a night of fasting, the body needs fuel to function properly. When we skip breakfast, our blood sugar levels drop, which can lead to dizziness, weakness, or even fainting. It also puts unnecessary strain on the heart, which has to work harder to maintain energy levels. That morning, Mr. Parker had gone outside to work on a small project without eating anything. He hadn't felt hungry, so he figured he'd get some work done and eat later. But without that first meal, his body didn't have the energy it needed to handle even light physical activity. Skipping breakfast had become a regular habit for him, and while it didn't seem like a big deal at first, over time, it had been taking a toll on his heart. His collapse was, in part, due to the fact that his heart was working harder than it needed to because his body was low on energy. For those of us who struggle with morning appetite, it's important to remember that breakfast doesn't have to be a big meal. Even something small, like a piece of fruit or a slice of toast, can give your body the fuel it needs to start the day. A light breakfast helps to stabilize your blood sugar and provide energy, reducing the strain on your heart and giving you the strength you need to get through your morning activities. Another part of Mr. Parker's morning routine that contributed to his collapse was the way he handled his medications. Like many people his age, Mr. Parker was on several medications for managing his blood pressure and cholesterol. He had developed a habit of taking them first thing in the morning, often without food. What he didn't realize was that some medications can irritate the stomach when taken on an empty stomach, and others require food to be properly absorbed into the body. Over time, this was causing discomfort in his digestive system, which he often brushed off as minor stomach troubles. But the real issue was that, without the proper food in his system, his medications weren't working as effectively as they should have been. His body wasn't absorbing them properly, and that meant his heart and blood pressure weren't being managed as well as they could have been. It's a common mistake. Many of us take our medications without paying attention to the instructions, thinking that it doesn't make a difference. But for older adults, it's especially important to take medications as directed and ensure that you're eating something beforehand if necessary. If you're on medications, take a moment to review the instructions. Some might need to be taken with food, while others are fine on an empty stomach. And if you're unsure, it's always a good idea to talk to your doctor or pharmacist. By making sure you're taking your medications properly, you can help ensure that they're working as effectively as possible and that you're not putting unnecessary strain on your body. One of the most overlooked dangers in Mr. Parker's routine was exposing himself to cold temperatures too quickly. That morning, like many mornings before, he had stepped outside early to work on a small project in the yard. It was still chilly, and Mr. Parker hadn't dressed warmly enough. Cold weather can cause blood vessels to constrict, which raises blood pressure and puts extra strain on the heart. For older adults, this sudden exposure to cold air, especially first thing in the morning, can significantly increase the risk of heart attack or stroke. In Mr. Parker's case, the combination of dehydration, lack of breakfast, and cold exposure created a perfect storm for his heart. If only he had taken the time to bundle up and let his body adjust to the temperature before heading outside, his heart might not have been under such intense strain. If you enjoy spending time outside in the mornings, especially when it's cool out, make sure you're dressing warmly and allowing your body time to adjust to the cold. Small adjustments like this can make a big difference in protecting your heart. Finally, Mr. Parker often skipped a proper warm-up before diving into his morning activities. As someone who had always been physically active, he felt that his body was strong enough to handle anything. But as we age, our muscles and joints become stiffer, especially after a night of rest. Going straight into physical tasks without warming up can lead to muscle strains, joint pain, or even falls. That morning, Mr. Parker had been working in his garden, bending and lifting without taking the time to stretch or loosen his muscles. A proper warm-up doesn't have to take long. Just a few minutes of gentle stretching or light exercises can help improve circulation, loosen stiff muscles, and reduce the risk of injury. For older adults, this is especially important. It not only prevents strains and injuries, but also helps to protect your joints and maintain your flexibility as you continue to stay active. Mr. Parker's story is a sobering reminder that even when we think we're doing everything right, there are always small adjustments we can make to protect our health. It's not about making huge changes. It's about paying attention to the details. Simple habits like drinking water, eating breakfast, taking medications properly, dressing for the weather, and warming up before activity can make all the difference in maintaining your health as you age. Thank you for taking the time to hear Mr. Parker's story. If there's one thing to take away from his experience, it's that these small habits matter. They're easy to overlook, but they can have a big impact on your long-term health and well-being. Take a moment to reflect on your own routine and see if there are any small changes you can make to improve your health. Whether it's drinking that extra glass of water or taking the time to eat a light breakfast, these little steps can help you live a longer, healthier life. If you found this information helpful, please like and share this video with someone who might benefit from it. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more tips on living a healthier, happier life at any age.